You're listening to the Clean Comedy Podcast with your host, James Creviston.
Hey, everybody, it's James, the Clean Comedy Podcast, and today I have one of my favorite people. If you're even familiar with comedy, if you're familiar with the comedy world, you've seen something that he's produced, he's made, his company's made. The company's called Comedy Dynamics. If you haven't seen it, you're missing out. It's everywhere. My first experience was coming to the stage. That was like the show that really brought me into them. And then they said basically tons of comedy specials. They've done other shows like the movies that made us, the toys that made us, the holiday movies that made us, Kevin Hart's Black History, like so many things. And then also these unearthed icons. The Simpsons was one of them. And as a Simpsons fan, you guys know that I love that. And now there's a Fast and Furious one. But please welcome the very talented, the amazing Brian Volk-Weiss. Brian, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I know you're a big toy fan. I know that's one thing about you because I'm also a big toy fan too. And you're also apparently a big comedy fan. So that's awesome. Kind of tell people who you are, how you got into this, because you've changed the world of comedy and a lot of stuff for a lot of people.
I mean, really, a lot of people are it's funny, man. Like, we've been doing stand-up comedy specials for almost 17, 18 years. So when Toys That Made Us came out, people were like, oh my God, why is the stand-up comedy guy's name on a documentary about toys? And then about 2 years after that, it started being like, wait, why is the guy from Toys and Movies That Made Us, why is his name on a stand-up special? That's so random. And it is random with one major exception. If there's any strategy to my strategy, and there is no strategy, I just turn my hobbies into jobs. So I loved comedy. I was a manager. I was a manager of pretty much only stand-up comedians. Oh, wow. Then while doing that, when you're a manager of comedians, once or twice a year, you make a stand-up special. And I was like, we could do that. So that's why we did it, because I love stand-up. I love collecting toys. I love toys. We took 7 years, but eventually sold Toys That Made Us. And then the way it works in Hollywood, as with most businesses, if you do something that works, then it gets easier to do more of that. So that led to Movies That Made Us, that led to Behind the Attraction at Disney Plus. And now, as you said, Icons on Earth for Vice. We do Center Seat, 55 years of Star Trek for History. I'm a big Trekkie. So It's literally just hobbies that become jobs.
That is the coolest way to do your life. I wish that's what my goal is in life, is to do my hobbies and make them become a business, make them financially successful. And you have done that. I watch your Instagram where you're always finding different toys from all over the world and stuff. It's so cool to watch. One of my favorite things growing up, that was too poor to have, by the way, but now that I'm older, I want to collect all of them, is the Captain Power. If you remember that, Captain Power, the Soldiers of the Future. And I would love for that to make a comeback at some point. I know it probably won't, but that's one thing. So when I saw you bring back RoboForce and stuff, I was like, oh, maybe he could do this next year.
I will say this. I'm going to bust your balls a little bit. I hope you don't mind. You may have been too poor, but then you were not diligent. And what I mean by that is, if you had waited 9 months and then you kept going back to the bargain bin, what was in 2023 dollars, $300?
Yeah.
9 months later might have been $27. And back then, what was $30, I think, was $3.99 9 months later. Dude, I had every toy my parents could afford 9 to 18 months after it had come out. The only exception was Star Wars. Star Wars I got brand new. But and it's funny, I'll tell you a story that makes me want to kill myself. My parents couldn't afford Transformers. So there was some store in New York that got these for those of you who can't see this, I'm doing air quotes, knockoffs. My entire Transformers that I played with when I were a kid was the Takara originals. So, like, I thought I had knockoffs. I thought I had crap. I thought I had secondhand garbage. That today, like, I had Convoy.
Yeah.
I
my
didn't
gosh.
play with Optimus Prime. I had Convoy. And, like, I was always like, why is everyone else's red and blue and mine is, like, gray and purple? And now that would be worth, like, 800% more than Optimus Prime, who's already worth quite a bit.
Yeah, that's amazing. Man, wow. It sounds like your parents really like loved you. My parents were not as loving.
They loved me, but it sounds like we had this in common, not a lot of money.
Yeah.
So that was, but it was just, oh God, if I still had those. Oh, I had like the yellow Sunstreaker, or no, not the yellow one. I had the red one. Like I had the green Ironhide, like all the stuff that today is practically priceless is what I played with. And it was so much cheaper than Transformers.
That's crazy. So as you've progressed in this world of making all these things that you love, making shows about them, you did the Simpsons one. You have the new one, Icons Fast and Furious, which when I was in the Navy, I got my first car that was a Mitsubishi Eclipse right as the first Fast and Furious movie came out, having no idea what that movie is about at all. But I bought that car thinking it was cool, and then it like blew up, and I would go places and people would try to buy the car off of me because of the movie.
I believe it. No, those movies are, I mean, again, you don't need me to tell you this. They're huge.
I honestly can't believe like a movie about street racing turned out to be one of the largest franchises in all. Like, if you would have told me that, I would have been like, no, there's no way this could go past this.
No,
doesn't make sense.
Everybody would have agreed with you, including the people making it. Like, I mean, no one is more surprised about this than them. You can, I mean, except for maybe Vin, but other than Vin, everybody else would be the first to tell you. And I mean, it was one of the coolest things for me because I've never directed a documentary about anything that I'm not insanely passionate about for many decades. So I dug in, I gave it a fair shake. I was curious, and now I'm obsessed. Like my gigantic, crazy collection, when we started working on this season, 0 Fast and Furious in my collection. Now I probably have close to a dozen, maybe more than a dozen cars. They make, I don't know if you know this or not, this is the greatest thing in the world. They make a miniature replica of Vin's house from the first movie. It's like a Micro Machines kind of thing. It's literally just some stupid house in like the suburbs of LA. But there's like the barbecue. There's like it's hysterical. And I bought it on general principle where I'm like, if I know what it takes to make a toy now. So the fact that there were all these staff meetings and all this creative and all this decisions and all this money spent to make a miniature replica of some random house from like Tarzan. I'm like, all right, I need to buy it.
Now, does it fit like the Hot Wheels size cars in the driveway and stuff, or like how big?
The Micro Machines ones, the tiny.
Wow,
it's nuts. It's not,
what even happened to Micro Machines? They don't even exist anymore, do they?
Well, they actually sort of do. I mean, they just came back about 1.5 years ago, but it was, I believe, I could be wrong about this, the brand, but what I'm saying is right, except the brand could be wrong. But I think it's Jack's Pacific. They brought it back. So they did a license, I believe, with Mattel. Could be Hasbro, but one of the two big companies owns the copyright to Micro Machines, and they just put out new ones that they're a little different, but they are still getting made.
That's so cool. Now you get to interact in the world of comedy and then interact in the world of toys. How awesome is your life? Like, how awesome must it be to be you? Like,
dude, it's, I mean, there needs to be a word. Like, you know how like a grand slam is better than a home run, which is better than a triple, so on and so on. There needs to be the grand slam version of the word surreal.
Yeah.
My life is so, I text with like one of the original leads from Next Generation almost on a daily basis. Like and it's funny, I said that to I was doing an interview recently and I said that, and the guy was like, yeah, but you're friends with The Rock. Like, first of all, I'm not friends with The Rock. I work with The Rock. I'm not friends with The Rock. But I sure as hell don't text with The Rock. But more importantly, I wasn't sitting there on my parents' carpet watching television at 12 looking at The Rock. You know,
Right.
I've been watching Next Gen since I was 11. And to like get a text from one of the leads who I have 20 versions of her character on my shelf, like, it's the craziest thing. It's crazy.
That's so cool. So how do you go about picking projects or even picking, well, since this is a comedy podcast, about picking comedians you're going to give specials to? I saw you just did one for Kellen Erskine, who I know is Tom Papa, who's one of my favorite people in the world and give me comedy advice as I was coming up in comedy. All kinds of people. Preacher Lawson's first special you gave to him that went to BET. So many of them. How do you decide who you're going to give specials to? How does that process work?
So I'm going to tell you something that may shock you.
Okay.
I do not use my gut. I mean, I trust my gut, but I have a network, a very, very small network. It's less than 20 people. It's agents, managers, comedians, and comedy club owners. And it's because here's the thing I learned. You know, as I told you, I was a manager. And what I learned as a manager, in fact, the entire reason I did what I did was because of this phenomenon. There are these gatekeepers at all these networks. It's not as bad as it used to be, but there's gatekeepers. And I remembered when I was a manager, I would have a client that the prior year had sold, let's say, 400 tickets to a show in Denver. And then this year sold 3,500 tickets to the same venue in Denver. So I would call up Comedy Central and be like, I got a client. My client's blowing up. Last year, she sold 10,000 tickets. This year, she sold 72,000 tickets and hasn't needed to do a single interview. And the gatekeepers would say, I don't find her funny. And in my head, I would be like, who are you to tell me you don't find my client funny? Your job is to find people for a certain amount of money that make the most amount of people laugh, which will then have Pepsi and General Motors pay you more for commercials. Like, that's the racket. Yeah. So who cares what you think? But of course, I never got to say that. So now that I've been in this chair for a while, getting to pick who we do and everything like that, I never make it about me. It's always, that's why, by the way, in particular, I love the comedy club owners and I love the touring agents because they're giving me the only thing that matters. Do my fellow Americans find this person funny at scale? And that's really how I make my decisions. We just did a special with Zarna Gregg. I don't know if you know Zarna or not.
No.
She's a New York comic. I got a tip from a comedy club owner. And I mean, I'll tell you, the same way I was positive about Ali Wong, the same way I was positive about Segura, Tiffany Haddish, Liza, whatever, like, I know she's going to be huge. And you could say, or other people could say, Brian, you're a genius. You got the golden gut. You got the eyeball of eyeballs. But no, I don't. I got a call from a guy who runs one of the most respected clubs on earth. And he told me, and this is what I listen for, and this is what I tell these people to look for. He told me waiters were stopping, waiting on tables to listen to her jokes.
That's big.
What that means is, how does a waiter make the money? Tips. And how does a waiter make money? Bringing food back and forth as much as you can. So for a waiter to stop doing their job because they're laughing so hard, that's what I trust more than my gut.
Yeah. That's great. That's fantastic. Now, I noticed that you guys do a little bit of podcasting, but not a lot, which is surprising because you have connections with so many comedians. Is that something you want to grow in 2023? Is that something that you're not looking to grow, or that just is not? I mean, because your company does a lot of stuff. Just so everybody knows, it's not just Comedy Dynamics. They do like PR, toys, podcasting. I mean, there's so many things. I can't even like list them all. If I start reading the page, then you'll see all the things. But
Well, I'm about to tell you something that either will one day. It's so funny. There's a very famous French general who, right before World War I, predicted that the airplane could never have a military purpose. And I'm always very nervous to be that guy. But I do have about 18 months worth of data. So we launched within about a 90-day period a podcast division, a publishing division, and a toy division. I would have bet you everything I owned the podcast division would be profitable first, the publishing division would be profitable second, and the toy division might never be profitable, and I would have to shut it down. That was my guess.
Okay.
The toy division and book divisions were profitable in less than a year. The podcasting division will never be profitable. The problem with the podcasts that I see, and again, I just want to be very clear. This is my opinion about my business. It could be wrong for everybody else. So I can only talk about my own experiences. The problem is the way to really make money is sponsorship. But the problem is you need to get enough listens and views and downloads or whatever to justify Pepsi or Coke giving you money to invest in the podcast. But the problem is to get there, you have to spend so much money to get talent that you're not going to break even.
Right.
That's one way to do it. But the other way to do it is you're an individual human being. You don't have a job, or you don't have a job you like, and you have nothing but time. So you just keep working at it. And let's say it takes you 3 years to get where you need to be because you're starting as nothing. No one's listening, so you don't get in any trouble. But then when it pops, it pops. But for a company like mine to acquire something like that, if it's worth $2 million, that person's going to want at least $4 million, rightfully so. Because why would they give up their complete freedom to then have a boss, which I completely respect? So I have not been able to crack the podcast business. It might be one of the only businesses I've ever gotten into in my career that we back out of at a loss. But we just can't find a way to make it work yet.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. This is over 300 episodes, and we're just making money in like year, I don't know what it is, 4 or 5 or episode around episode 200 we started making money. But it took a long time. But it's one of those things where it just takes a lot of time to get there. I know I only have you for a little bit of time. What's that?
Are you for sale?
To you, only to you, actually. I would only ever sell to you, to be honest with you.
Can I pay you half of what it's worth? Because then we got it here.
If I can work at Comedy Dynamics and do something with you and also make this podcast, 100%. I'll do it any day of the week.
We'll have our people talk.
All right, that's fine. What are you hyped about for 2023? I know that you guys already have the Fast and Furious thing coming out. You have a lot of other specials, like I said, that I mentioned that were coming out. I know there's another Tom Papa special that I saw on IMDb. That excites me. Again, Tom Papa's huge for me. What big things are you excited about? Not even just in comedy itself, but it could be albums, it could be toys, whatever you want to mention.
So, it's funny. Whenever somebody asks you, what are you excited about? The things you're usually excited about are the new stuff that you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is going on. I can't talk about that stuff.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Like we have if you said, we're friends on Instagram, like you probably saw me all over the world last year shooting TV shows, and you were like, what the hell is he shooting? I still can't talk about it. But like that stuff is like but like so that stuff I'm so excited about. Like I'll give you another example. We got our first third-party license ever. So we're literally designing a toy right now for one of my favorite TV shows of all time. Like, I just got some proofs in yesterday, and I'm like, I truly cannot believe this is my life. These are character names I've had memorized for close to 10 years. I never go to parties. Like, I'm not a party guy. Like, at Comic-Con 2019, I went to a party by myself. But to stand on, I hate lines. I know everybody hates lines. I really hate lines.
Yeah.
I stood on line for over an hour by myself, went to the stupid party by myself just to get a glimpse of a couple people in the cast. Wow. That's how much I love this show. And now we're doing the toys. And like, there's like a scene in the last season where I said to the rights holder, a huge studio, to put it mildly, and I'm like, hey, I would like to replicate this scene of these two characters shaking hands. I'd like that to be the early bird special that we put out before the rest of the line. Is that okay? And they were like, it's your decision. Do whatever you want. And I'm like,
that's awesome.
Oh, all right. I guess they trust us. By the way, as they should. Like, it's truly in my top 5 favorite shows ever made. And we're making the toys. And it's insane. I mentioned Zarna before. I can't say where her special is going to air, but it'll be announced soon. But Zarna. I have never been so excited. I've never been more excited about a future special that's coming.
That's awesome. Well, I'm happy to have her on the podcast and to help promote and do whatever you guys need for that. Yeah,
I'll let her know. That's great. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. You have seriously been a huge influence on me. I started watching Coming to the Mic when it was on Hulu and stuff. I watched every single episode. I was like, this is the coolest show ever. This is like a show that we should have constantly on TV all the time. So that brought me to you, and then it snowballed from there. And I was like, man, this is like the dream place. So I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for what Comedy Dynamics has done for the comedy world, for what you're doing out there, for what you're doing for bringing back toys to the world. Because the toys that made us, I get to show my kids stuff that hey, I had this when I was a kid, or this is what we played with, or this is what we liked.
That's another thing. You just reminded me. We announced a couple days ago we're doing a cartoon based on RoboForce, the series. So our first toy that just physically showed up from China less than a month ago, we just greenlit a 6-episode cartoon based on that IP. So that is one of the flagship programs of this company.
That is so awesome. You're amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you want to share? Anything you want people to be aware of that's coming out besides the Fast and Furious that's going to be on Vice and all the comedy specials? Anything else that you're really hyped about that was coming out?
Fast and Furious will be out season 3, which is Fast and Furious, as you said, on Monday.
Okay.
Nice. We are in post on 2 more seasons of A Toy Store Near You. It is last year we put out 1 season. It is our intention this year to put out 2 seasons. They premiere on Amazon, and then about 6 months later, they're everywhere else. So very excited about that.
Are we getting any more of the movies that made us and stuff? Are we getting any more of those?
All I can say, and I'm sorry it's so cheesy.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Stay tuned.
All right. Those are my favorite. You did Die Hard for movies that I was like, yes, this is exactly, that's one of my favorites of all time. So thank you so much.
We have that in common.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Please go check out Comedy Dynamics. Check out Icons Fast and Furious on Vice. If you don't have Vice, there's lots of ways to get it. You can go out and check it out. They also have The Simpsons, and I believe, what was the other one? I know there was another one. Star Wars, that's right. Star Wars, Simpsons, yeah, and Fast and Furious. 3 things that I am into, so it's good. Thank you so much, and have a good one. Bye.